Hey, did you know we're a podcast? Check out Speaking of, the Unbothered edition with Casey Chapter. Yes, like the book, featuring extended interviews and more guests. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. This next segment involves book clubs. What's the worst one you've ever read? I've got a few.
Welcome back to Speaking of. I am Casey Chapter. That is my name, no puns necessary.
And I'm Regan McCarthy, Assistant News Director here at WFSU Public Media.
And today we are speaking of books.
And specifically reading for pleasure. And how many people do it anyway?
I feel like a lot of people do, but I think maybe my circles are people who read more regularly anyway. So, what's the last book you read, Regan?
Well, I just actually finished listening to a book on Audible called The Husbands, and it's all about this woman who has a magical attic in her house, and the house makes a husband for her in this attic and sends him down, and she gets to try out these different lives. Some of the husbands are richer, some of them are great cooks, some of them have better design style, and every time things are not going well with a husband, she can send him back into the attic and get a new one. And so it's a really good book. And I heard about it on social media, on Instagram. I feel like that's, I'm sure you've heard of Bookstagram, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where I get a lot of my book recommendations these days is social media. And it's kind of fun. I feel like we're all part of this little community where sometimes I feel like everybody on social media is reading the same thing at the same time.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think that I've noticed the same thing. I will also get different reels that pop up that are like, here's what you should read if you liked this movie, or this is what you should read if you want this particular type of feeling. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that access to social media has given me a longer to be read list.
Yeah, for sure. What about you? What books have you been reading lately?
Yeah, so I actually went to a local book club recently. I wanted to find a local book club to talk to somebody about reading and literacy and books because I love books. I've always loved reading. I grew up reading. And I found a local book club, and the person who founded this book club said he would do an interview with me, but he asked that I, read the book and join them for their meeting. And so I did. And the book was Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I listened to it because the library didn't have a physical or ebook copy, so I had to do the audiobook version. But it was cool because the way he writes, his style is like the grammar is incorrect intentionally, kind of to capture the accent. So it was really cool listening to it with that voice. It was kind of scene setting, and then his writing is so descriptive anyway that it was just like I felt like I was there.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you listened on Audible or on an audiobook, because I was just saying that the last book that I read was an audiobook. But tell me about the book club. How did that go?
Yeah, it was really fun. So his name's Bennett Zollner, and he has always loved reading from when he was a kid, too. And so I loved being able to sit there and listen to them all talk about this. Also, I studied literature, so this is what I used to do when I was in college. We would just, read the book and then talk about it. So being able to sit in on a book club and do that again was really, really cool and really rewarding. And I was just like, I've tried to start book clubs in the past, and it always ends up somehow falling apart, or people aren't really as committed to it. And I was like, how do you keep this book club? How do you sustain this? And he had some really interesting things to say about that.
I think it should keep being fresh. We want to keep people engaged. I think it's good to change up every once in a while. And also every time we do that, it's just kind of just trying to expose people to more. Just like we've read a lot of some dystopian fiction, sci-fi. We've had some, kind of you could say great American novels, some, and more classics and feminist novels. And now we got our first romance. We've had a lot of depressing books. We got our first, love romance book coming up. So having those strict rules that don't change, but then having change all around that, I think is essential. And we'll probably keep that going.
So yeah, it seems like it's a really fun way to stay engaged and accountable within the book club by setting hard deadlines and hard rules about how you meet. And then also everybody will stay engaged by rotating who picks the book. So the way it works for them is each week a new person will bring in 3 to 5 choices, and then they'll pitch all the choices for like what book they want to read that month, and then they do ranked choice voting, and that's how they decide the book.
Oh, that's an interesting way to do it. I actually have been part of a book club since I moved to Tallahassee. So we've been doing it for years. And we do the same thing where we rotate who gets to pick the book, and whoever is picking the book also hosts. So it's a little bit of like, well, you have to host, but you got to pick the book. And so there's no voting, like whatever you say the book is, that goes. But it's a lot of pressure because if you pick a bad book, everybody knows it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and actually, I will say that I picked one of the worst books that my book club has ever read. It was called My Life Would Be Perfect If I Lived in This House. It was terrible, but that was the most fun that we've ever had at book club because everybody was on the same page that this was the worst book we've ever read. And we just loved tearing it to shreds.
Right, yeah. So either way, even if you don't enjoy doing the reading or reading the actual book, the discussion is what it's all about. It's a social event, which I think is so cool. So even if you don't enjoy the book, like, you're having a great time because everybody agrees, right?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
If they don't agree, even then, you can have a great debate over it. Like, okay, why didn't you like this? And what about it could have been different to make you like it more?
Well, and that's what I feel like, going back to that idea of like social media, where like everybody on social media, like we're all reading the same book, right? Which I think is fun. It's like we're all in this like, social media wide book club.
No, absolutely. Especially if you don't really have like a social network in, geographically near you, you can stay connected with people that way. So something else that I thought was really interesting when I was looking into who to talk to about books and reading, over at Pineview Elementary School, they had a program where they had kids take home a bunch of books for the summer because they wanted the reading levels to stay consistent. So if kids are able to take home books and read them over the summer, they'll keep reading, it'll keep them engaged, and then they'll be ready to keep reading when they come back after summer break, right? And like these kids, they were so excited when they walked into this room full of books, and they were all like filling their little bags with all these different books. Like, they were so excited about it. And the principal, Carmen Connor, talked a little bit about why it was so important for them to be able to do that.
When you think about our students and how reading impacts them significantly, the goal is by third grade, they should be a proficient reader. But I was telling you, 50% of our kids come and they don't have that to be successful. So providing experiences like this expands their repertoire of words. So and the more words they are connected with, the more they can comprehend, and the more they can use that knowledge to be able to read, comprehend, and understand text.
Wow, I love hearing about those kids that are having so much fun learning to read. I love summer reading too. I feel like I remember as a kid being part of the summer reading program at the library, and you could earn such funny prizes. Like if you read 3 books, you get a pencil, but like earning that pencil, it was such a good trophy.
It felt really good.
Well, as the daughter of an English teacher and a school librarian, I feel like I could go on and on all day talking about books.
Me too. My last name, again, is literally Chapter. Like, I think I was born to be a librarian.
Definitely.
So now I do think it is time to cut myself off, though. So we'll sign off here. I'm Casey Chapter.
And I'm Regan McCarthy.
And this has been Speaking Of.
Check out the extended version of the Unbothered edition wherever you get your podcasts. That's it for this week's episode of Speaking Of. Got something to say? An idea for a show? Drop us a line at speakingof@wfsu.org. We want to hear from you. Speaking Of is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. And it's brought to you by the fabulous, wonderful, yet overworked storytellers here at WFSU Public Media. Talk soon.